Senate will come back to order. Secretary read House Bill 268.
House Bill 268 by Representative Persinger, the 119th, and others, bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the OCGA related to elementary and secondary education so as to provide for safety, health, and well-being of students and school communities, to create the Office of Safe Schools within the Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security Agency, to provide technical assistance for local school systems, to develop policies and procedures for the threat management teams, to develop statewide behavioral threat management operational process, to provide for definitions and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland, Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary offers the following substitute to House Bill 268, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 11, Title 15, Chapter 2 of Title 20, and Chapter 3 of Title 38 of the OCGA related to juvenile code and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senator Parent of the 44th and others offer the following amendment number 1 to amend the Senate Committee on Judiciary substitute to House Bill 268 by removing the quotation mark at the end of line 1015 and inserting between lines 1015 and 1016 the following. J1, the Department of Education, in collaboration with the Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security agencies, shall develop information and other resources regarding the safe storage of firearms and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Senator from the 41st, do you have a point of personal privilege or what? Parliamentary inquiry or what?
For unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 22nd.
From the 27th? 22nd. Okay, yeah, without objection, senator from the 22nd is excused.
And the senator from the 17th.
And the 17th. Without objection, those two are excused. Recognize the senator from the 46th to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, this is not a happy bill to present, and it is very unfortunate that we're having to worry so badly about the safety of our children in our schools. But it's something that we need to do, and I'm happy to be involved in the process. Unfortunately, this began with tragedy back on September 4th of 2024 when there was a senseless shooting at Appalachia High School in Barrow County. It's in the 46th district. Myself, the senator from the 45th and the 47th share Barrow County, and it was quite the tragic day to hear the news coming out of there. To the best of my knowledge, this is the first school shooting in the state of Georgia. Certainly the first mass shooting. I've not heard or learned of any before, and thank God there have been none since. The Speaker and the House of Representatives adopted this as their number one priority for this legislative system. We want to make sure that this never happens again in the state of Georgia. And I give the highest accolades to Speaker Burns and the work that he's done in pulling together many different ideas to address the root of the problem and to prevent it from happening again in the future. And that if it ever does, that we will be able to respond in a very efficient, fast manner, very similar to how Barrow County responded in this case back in September. It's impossible to tell you how much detail the House Education Chairman, Chris Irwin, went to in drafting this bill. Came through his committee, and I am really, really impressed at the thoroughness and the thoughtfulness of the provisions that are included in this bill. I think we can all be very proud of the work product. And Representative Holt Persinger, who represents the area as well, very close to home to him, took it very personal, and he has driven this legislation through both the House and through the Senate now. You may remember we have had several bills in the Senate this year that we've passed that deal with aspects of school safety. And I won't call the senators out by name, but we had one bill that deals with the criminal aspects of terroristic threats on school property, threats to students, threats to school activities. Senator from the 27th pushed that legislation, and it, of course, passed our Senate overwhelmingly, and it has been folded into this House Bill 268. Also, the senator from the 31st had a very important bill, Ricky and Elisa's Law, that dealt with how do you react to this? How do you prevent this from happening, but how do you make it easier for law enforcement and public agencies to respond? And that bill requires panic alert buttons to be present in the schools so that if something starts happening, help can be called immediately. It also calls for the mapping of schools and school properties so that law enforcement will know where they're going, where every entrance, every exit, the cafeteria, the art room, the theater, each classroom, the offices, where they are on the diagram, on the schematic. And so if you get a call, we have an active shooter in Mrs. Jones' 8th grade classroom, these folks will know where to go and how to get the other students out in a fast and expeditious manner. That has been largely implemented with very few changes in this House bill. And finally, the senator from the 45th, who also represents the Appalachia area, realized that one of the problems with that particular incident was the student had newly transferred into the district, and the new set of teachers and administrators didn't know about any troubles he had been in the past and whether he was a threat or a danger. And so we had a bill that the senator from the 45th sponsored here that we passed out that requires the transfer of a student's record from the school they're moving from to their new school within 5 days. That is also embedded in this bill. So this is a joint work product of both the House and the Senate under the Speaker's stewardship, the Lieutenant Governor's broad endorsement of the bill, and the work in the House and the Senate. As I looked at the issues and tried to get myself in the right frame of mind to present this to you, what is a very, very serious subject. It is truly a life and death subject matter. There's a lot of bills we deal with in here that deal with certain business aspects or rights or beliefs or tax breaks. A lot of things we deal with that are business-oriented, almost mundane. But there's nothing like worrying about the safety of your children and your grandchildren. And every parent ought to know when they drop their child off at school or they put them on that bus to go to school every day, that they're coming home safe and that they're going to be an environment where they can learn and not be worried about their physical safety. We can't do everything on this, but this bill is a great step forward to ensure the safety of our children, to protect them from this type of tragedy in the future. And I want to make sure that the lives of those lost at Appalachia are not lost in vain, that we prevent that from happening in the future. I would ask you to please join with me and let's honor the deceased. If you would stand with me, please.
Senators ask for a moment of silence.
Mason Skirmerhorn, a 14-year-old student. Christian Angulo, also a 14-year-old student. Christine Irami, a 53-year-old math teacher. And Richard Aspinwall, a 39-year-old math teacher and assistant football coach. In addition, there are 8 students and 1 teacher who were wounded. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Let's don't let them die in vain. Let's talk about what we can do to prevent this type of tragedy from ever happening again in the state of Georgia. Let's do what we can to make certain that when we take our children and our grandchildren and future generations of children to school, that they're safe and they're protected and they're to learn and to grow and develop into responsible adults. I believe everybody here would agree with me that at the root of almost every one of these incidents nationwide are mental health problems. Almost always there's a mental illness. Many times there's a lack of parental involvement. There are lacks of discipline. There are warning signs, things that have happened over the years in classrooms and out of classrooms that should have put us on notice that something might happen. I am stunned how many times after the fact we go look at social media, Twitter, X, or Facebook, Snapchat, all the different social media that the kids use these days. There's almost always some type of threat, some type of lashing out, some types of cry for help that when you look back at it after the fact, you're like, wow, we should have seen that coming. Or some people will say, I knew that kid wasn't right, that we were scared of them. Always feared that they might do something like this. What we're hoping to do in this bill is to try to identify those type of mental health problems, dangerous kids, and to intervene, to give them help early so that we can address those problems before they devolve into this very destructive behavior. One thing that the bill does, and I'm jumping around on it, I'll try to lead you through it. I can answer questions and tell you where we're going, but it is not in a sort of a linear order in the bill, so I'm going to take out the big picture for you and tell you what we're doing. In section 2-20, this is all the way back on page 47 in our bill, which is, I think, 57 pages. We're requiring every school to have a school safety plan. Now, most every school already has one, and this is how you keep your kids safe, how you respond to emergencies, etc. But I'll point you to lines 1196. No later than January 1st of 2027, each public school safety plan, which are already required, shall include provisions that address the behavioral health needs of students and a behavioral threat assessment management plan that'll provide a structured, multidisciplinary process to identify, assess, and mitigate potential threats while supporting the safety and well-being of the students and the school personnel. And that's pretty flowery language, very aspirational language. But what we do right here is say, part of your school safety plan has to deal with the behavioral health, the mental health that's acted out. So we want to identify mental health problems and address them. Help the students find help if they need it, because then we make the entire student body a safer place. It's going to take some personnel to do this. And so we, in the bill, require each school to have an individual that will help them deal with this. We have identified those or sort of defined them as a qualified student advocacy specialist. Now, that's not somebody that's like a lawyer advocating for the students. That's a mental health professional to help address mental health problems with students, how to identify them, how to respond to them, how to intervene in the lives of these troubled young folks. And so all public schools always say, don't put any unfunded mandates on us. Don't tell us what all we have to do and then just leave us to ourselves. And so this bill doesn't. We set up state grants to fund these mental health specialists in each school system. And it's a sliding scale. If you have less than 18,000 kids in your school district, the state's going to pay for one of these student advocacy specialists. If you have 18 to 36,000 students, you'll qualify for grants for two. And if you're more than 36,000 students, your district will be funded for three of these specialists. Doesn't limit you as a school district just to those numbers. You can employ as many as you want to, but the state is going to pay for at least those minimum basic positions. And they will try to figure out how to educate the student population, how to educate the faculty, the administration over what the threats are, how to identify them, how to treat them, how to respond to them, how to prevent any of these incidents from taking place in the future. That's a start. It's not the solution, but it's a start that we are putting focus on the mental health, that we're going to have specialists in each school system to help coordinate the response to mental health problems, behavioral health problems. We also have put in training for the students, that each student each year will receive 1 hour of training and instruction on suicide prevention. Suicide is a much larger issue with our youth than we wish, and this will help them understand the problems that they may be dealing with can be handled through other means. How to identify other students that are potential suicide risks to get them the mental health that they need. How to know to identify potential problems in themselves where they can reach out for help. And also 1 hour per year of violence prevention training to teach kids about violence in school, how to control your emotions and your impulses and your behavior, what the appropriate boundaries are in interactions amongst other students, and how to identify and recognize other children that might be a threat to committing violence in the school. That doesn't sound like a lot. An hour per student per year on the mental health angle, on suicide prevention, and on the behavioral side, violence prevention. But it's a darn good start. And it shows that it matters to us, and we want to continue pushing that information out to our students so they're aware. Another part of the bill that I think is brilliant is to require each school system to have an anonymous reporting system where if you see dangerous behavior, hear dangerous threats, that you have a place to report those, open 24/7, confidentially, anonymously, so you can share your concerns, so that the first we hear about your concerns are not after the fact, where you go back and say, man, I knew something was wrong with that kid. I wish I'd told somebody. Might have made a difference. The fact that they're anonymous makes people more likely to come forward, and they'll be staffed 24/7 by mental health professionals that are able to know what to do with the information and know what is legitimate threat or concern to convey to school administrators and what is idle chatter amongst the students. One of the hardest things we dealt with in this bill in the Senate, it came through Judiciary Committee, and I chaired the subcommittee where we heard 2.5 hours of testimony, mostly from concerned parents. But one of the biggest concern is what do you do with information that you receive about potential dangerous behavior? The House bill had created a database, and they called it the S3 database, where there would be like a offline record of all the complaints, concerns, worries about kids. That was different from the online record, your student record that has your academic achievement, your attendance in the school, your disciplinary problems that you actually got suspended or expelled or whatever. And of course, a criminal record if you've gone that far. But the original bill created another kind of database that dealt with complaints, let's say. Now, I've got 2 boys and a girl. Any of you with multiple children know every single one of them's totally different. Same gene pool of the parents, boy, they come out unbelievably different. Some are risk takers, some are quiet, studious, some are loud, boisterous, gregarious. It's a whole spectrum. But anybody with boys in particular, a juvenile boy is by definition immature. Their brains aren't formed, their personalities aren't formed, they're not wise like us parents, and they say and do stupid, irresponsible things. And we know that. They're our children, we love them. And all the teachers do too, and you discipline them and you bring them along, and lo and behold, before you know it, they grow up and they become productive citizens. And some of the stupid pranks you do in middle school or high school, or the dumb things you might say, the parents kept coming and being heard saying, I don't think I want my child to be persecuted for life because they do something stupid in the 8th grade and they say, man, I'd like to blow this building up. That ain't good to say, but that doesn't mean they're going to do it. And if the school faculty didn't think it was significant enough or serious enough to give them disciplinary action and create a record, why should we have this shadow database, so to speak, on misconduct of students that didn't arise to criminal conduct or disciplinary proceedings in school? Amazing the number of boy moms that came saying, Lord have mercy, please don't stigmatize my son. And this is something that the entire political spectrum weighed in on. Most of the emails you've gotten are from parents that are like, I don't want my child to be labeled for some anonymous allegations or some concerns of other kids or parents. And I heard strong from the African American community, I don't want some racial profiling of my child because somebody claims they did something wrong or made a threat that they have not been convicted of or proved of. And the same thing, the far right, parents saying this is an invasion of privacy, it is a stigma attached, and how long will it last? Is it going to stick with them the rest of their life till they get through high school, till they get through college? There were many, many confusing, conflicting views on this. So if that's your concern with the bill, it has been removed from the bill. There will not be a database kept with GMA or anybody else. Students still have their school record, but there's not going to be some amorphous S3 database that can haunt a child even when they really never acted on their immature comments, let's say. That should eliminate a lot of potential questions that I may be asked before this presentation's over. Now, as far as reporting things, you've got the anonymous reports that can get back to administration. They can decide what's serious, what needs to be acted on. We're also requiring law enforcement, for the first time, requiring them, if they have an official encounter with a school-age youth, so they're investigating wrongful conduct. Thank you, Mr. President. They need to file a written report of that with the school. Whatever school the kid's enrolled in, public or private school, the administration needs to know, because most of the cutting up and bad behavior happens off campus, after school hours, weekends. But this again helps us report, learn about problem conduct. There are other aspects of the bill that are sort of on the prevention end. And one thing we see over and over is the kids that act out and commit violent acts many, many times have very poor family structure, family support, parental influence. I don't know about y'all. I'm as old as I look, and boy, I'm going to tell you right now, I was way more scared of my mom and my daddy than I was of any teacher or principal. Don't call my mama, whatever you please, don't call my mama. You can give me that spanking, but I don't want to have to go home and deal with Virginia and Willie, my daddy, because that wasn't good. And I had to take that report card home my very first grade. Bill is disturbing those around him. I never did that again, I promise you, after that lesson was made. And I was so shy before then, I was scared to go to kindergarten. I wouldn't go. I was a little mama's boy, I guess. When I got out in the big world, man, I had disturbed those around me one time, and that game was over. From there on in, I paid attention. That isn't always the case today. There's an awful lot of children that don't have a mama and a daddy in the household. A lot of them are raised by grandparents. A lot of them don't have to get disciplined if their grades aren't up, or if they don't go to school, or if they misbehave in school. Don't know how we deal with that, but this bill will address part of it. It will require, if a kid has been absent for more than 30 consecutive days, and the parents have not advised the school administration of why, they've decided to homeschool the child, or maybe they've been traveling, or maybe there's been an illness, or maybe a death in the family, or maybe a change in jobs or location of the parents, whatever reason. If the parents hadn't explained to the administration why their kids stopped coming to school, it might be because they don't know. And this helps them learn. It's required to be reported to the parents and to DFACS, to pay a visit to that house and say, do you realize your children aren't going to school, or your child's, and is there a reason? Because if you're out 30 days or more, you are falling behind, for one thing, in school, and it is also very possibly a result of a disciplinary problem, or a warning of disciplinary problems to come. So you see how we have little pieces in this bill that every one of them makes sense on their own, and when you add them together, they are an effective countermand and an attempt for us to identify bad behavior, mental health problems, potential violent problems in school, self-harm, and intervene, and let's help heal these kids. Let's help bring them back into the mainstream and reduce any threat. Now, the next stage is how you deal with the wrongful conduct. We've already made sure we have the school records that tell about their issues. We've already reported problems, both out of school by law enforcement, in school anonymously. We've got a plan. We've got behavioral health management. As we layer on there, there's a part of the bill that deals with how do you punish inappropriate, unacceptable student conduct. There are certain hard lines, red lines that we have to draw. Some call them in the military no-fly zones. I call them in this context zero tolerance. There is certain behavior that we are not going to put up with in our schools. We can't tolerate it and keep them safe for our children. The Center from the 27th had a bill here on terroristic threats. And that's one of the bright lines we're drawing in the sand on this bill. That if you make threats to harm other students, kill other students, blow up a school building, disrupt our public schools, that will be treated as an adult offense. We have a list of those already, and they're murder and rape and aggravated assault, aggravated battery, other serious violent crimes. And what we're doing here now is saying, if you are making terroristic threats at school to harm other students or interfere with school activities, you're going to Superior Court, where it's up to the prosecutor, may treat you as an adult if you're 13 to 17 and make that a felony offense, 1 to 5 years. There are certain behaviors we are not going to tolerate. To make a threat would be a misdemeanor, but you're threatening terroristic acts on school property, then that would be unacceptable, no-fly zone, zero tolerance. Wrapping up, and I can't hit on everything in my time limit, is the things I mentioned earlier. We're going to have each school equipped with these type of alert systems. We got them here. You click the button. Some of your admins may have them if you have a health issue or you're in physical distress, or if there were a shooter to come in here. Do y'all even remember? Public may not know. At the first of every session, we have a sort of a skull session with our Capitol Police telling us, where do you go? I won't reveal our secrets. Where are our safe rooms that we go if we're alerted that there is a shooter in the building? Unbelievable we have to worry about that in our society, but each school is going to have a panic alert system for their personnel so they can call for help if needed. And each school will have mapping done of their premises, that just think in your head like a floor plan of the school, schematic diagrams, every entrance, every exit, every defibrillator in there, the identity of all the classrooms, hallways, gym, etc., so that if you have to call for help, they know where you're calling from and how to get to you and how to get everybody else out of harm's way. These are the highlights of the bill. There's more to it. I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you may have, but I strongly, strongly encourage your support for this comprehensive approach to help make our schools safe for our children so they can learn and socialize and interact and grow up together in a safe environment. Mr. President, with that, if there are no questions, I will yield it well and ask for your I want to see unanimous passage of this bill.
You do have one question, Senator. Recognize Senator from 38.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chairman, do you yield?
I yield.
So I really commend the speaker for his leadership on school safety. One of the big concerns that I have was the addition of Senate Bill 61 to this, because this drastically changes his original bill. In it, if I point to line 1275, for example, it makes a big change that goes beyond just school safety, does it not?
What page is that? Give me
It's
a little heads
on
up.
page 50.
Page 50.
Yes, sir. And the change that I'm speaking of, kids who are now can be tried in Superior Court, a 13-year-old kid that commits aggravated assault if committed with a firearm. What was stricken was upon a public safety officer, as such acts are prohibited. And so that is beyond just school safety, right? So this could capture, for example, a kid who has been wrapped up in a gang and their lives could be drastically changed as a result of this
That is.
amendment.
So where you are, this is great. As you all know how our bills act, if a line's stricken through something, you're deleting from the existing code. If it's underlined, we're adding to it. So you have just identified the code section that allows 13 to 17-year-olds to be prosecuted as adults in Superior Court. Murder, murder in the second degree, voluntary manslaughter, aggravated child molestation, aggravated sexual battery, armed robbery if committed with a firearm, and aggravated assault if committed with the firearm. It used to be just on an officer. Now we're saying, if you're shooting at people, you're doing adult behavior, and you need to be prosecuted as an adult. And then it still has aggravated battery upon a public safety official. And all we're doing is adding to, and I'll go in reverse order, attempt to commit murder. Already, if you murder somebody, you can be treated as adult. Now it's, when you try to kill them and fail, you still are now doing adult behavior and need to be treated as such. And the other one is a terroristic act upon a school. Not a threat, an act. If you commit a terroristic act at school, zero tolerance. You're making adult choices, and you need to be punished or treated as one.
Right, Mr. Chairman, but
But you're right. Right now, the law is if you have aggravated assault with a firearm on a public safety official, you can be treated as adult. Now we're saying, we don't care if it's a police officer you're shooting at. If you're trying to kill anybody, if you're shooting a weapon at them, then you need to be treated as an adult because you are a danger to our society.
right, so really that would be 3 additions or changes, correct? And that is beyond just in a school safety.
This behavior is anywhere except the terroristic act is at a school.
Yes, sir.
Or on a school.
Mr. Chairman, do you further yield for one more
Sure,
question?
I will.
You read a few of the things that we've noticed in commonalities between these school shootings across the country: mental illness, lack of parental involvement, or as we all know, then we look back on their social media and see a lot of the warning signs were there. Does this bill
And
do
mental health.
anything to limit assault weapons or deadly weapons, reducing magazine capacity or anything in
Already
terms of
done.
school safety?
It is already illegal. It's a criminal act to take any firearms on school property. This doesn't touch that. It adds to that. That's another zero tolerance that's already in the law. We do not allow firearms at school, and this doesn't change that, and it doesn't change the punishment for that. But that's good policy, and I hope we keep it. I did notice there's an amendment. I didn't have time to study it, but deals somehow with firearms or whatever. Whether that's a good idea or not, I'm not going to comment on, but I think this is such a comprehensive bill, and it has been so thoroughly vetted through the House, through our Judiciary Committee, that my hope is we can pass this as is, that the House will agree, and we can send the message to Georgia that we hear them loud and clear, that our children's safety is our most important duty, and that we're going to answer, and these lives did not die in vain.
You have no further questions?
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Senator from the 4th, would you like to speak to the bill?
Thank you, Mr. President. I attended at least 4 school safety meetings this past, in November and December. And I would personally like to thank the Speaker, Chairman Irwin, and Representative Persinger, and now our Senate Judiciary Committee for bringing this bill forward. I was very naive when I first started attending these meetings. I thought that we could prevent the violence in schools. But through these meetings, I learned pretty fast that the best thing we can do is minimize it. And I think, in my opinion, that's what this bill does. In Athens, Georgia, back in December, Chairman Irwin and I and some other representatives met with probably 29 school superintendents. And their concern, the biggest problem they thought was the transfer of school records. So when a kid comes to their school, they really don't know what the background of that child is or the history of the child. Well, House Bill 268 addresses that. It requires all relevant student records to be transferred in a timely manner when a student transfers. It also allows for AGMA and Homeland Security to establish a statewide alert system to report and monitor incidents of safety threats against schools. House Bill 268 requires all schools to implement a mobile panic alert system, which we know about. House Bill 268 creates a qualified student advocacy specialist. As I've heard in here so many times, Senator from 46, there is no perfect bill. And this may not be a perfect bill, but this is a great place to start. I would hope that we would pass this bill. I pray that we pass this bill, because we don't need, as Governor Kemp has said on so many things, there is no next year to school safety. It needs to be done today. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Thank you, Senator. Recognize the Senator from the 44th has the speak chair amendment.
Mr. President, and good afternoon, colleagues. I rise to present Amendment 1. This, like other parts of the bill, is an amendment about education, kind of in the same vein as the violence prevention and suicide prevention education. And I'm hoping that it is something that we can all get behind. There's no mischief within it, and I'll explain what I mean. So I pulled this from Texas. Texas also passed a comprehensive school safety bill after the tragic mass shooting at Robb Elementary in Uvalde. And as part of that legislation, which was HB 3 in 2023, they mandated education about safe storage of firearms to be made available to all parents and guardians of children enrolled in Texas public schools. So through that legislation, they started Keep 'em Safe Texas. I put a flyer on your desk so you can see what kind of sort of educational materials Keep 'em Safe Texas, which is within the Texas School Safety Center, would make available on school websites to parents. So the only difference in Amendment 1 and the law in Texas, well, there's actually one big difference is that Texas actually mandates safe storage. Understand that's not something that the General Assembly is interested in doing at this time. So through Texas's law, they educate, through Keep 'em Safe Texas, they also educated about the safe storage laws around minors to the schools. That is obviously not a part of this because we do not have any safe storage laws around minors laws here in Georgia. And the only other difference is that I wrote it with the appropriate entities with what we have in Georgia law for school safety and existing Georgia law, and of course under HB 268. So you'll see that it references the Georgia Department of Education and the Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security agencies. These are the entities charged within our law and in this legislation with overseeing the new requirements of HB 268. So it's simply an education piece, like I said, not unlike the violence and suicide prevention pieces of 268. I view it as a no downside way to try to make our kids in our schools a bit safer. There's no penalties, there's no mandates to any families or restrictions or burdens on any gun ownership. So I view it very much as a friendly amendment. I think it's a win-win for our state, and I think that's why they did it in Texas. Now, I know most of the time I'm up here yapping about my safe storage bill and putting, the misdemeanor provisions in place that I have in that legislation. As I said already, but it bears repeating, this is a no mischief contained educational piece that I think, again, is a win-win. And I am happy to answer any questions about it.
You do have a couple questions, Senator. Recognize Senator from the 22nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. The gentlelady yield?
Of course.
One of the things you mentioned here, you put on our desk about Texas, can you kind of go into why it's so important that actually the state of Texas and their view as far as the Second Amendment is concerned, that would be a good model for us to actually kind of follow too?
Well, I think that's a great question, Mr. Leader, and I thank you for it. Look, I mean, none of us, I don't believe, would regard Texas as anything other than a very pro-Second Amendment state. So this is simply after Uvalde, Robb Elementary, they are thinking along the exact same lines as the Speaker of the House and Rep. Persinger and everyone else that has worked so hard on HB 268. And as part of that legislation, they said, look, one of the things we can do is just, like we do with many, many, many other things, our public schools are a good way to get out civic education in sort of an efficient manner. And here it's even more appropriate because we're talking about children, right? So what this deals with specifically, HB 268 and Amendment 1, is the safety of kids, right? And of course, by association, everyone else in a school building. But we're really talking about children. So I think that their way of adding, Texas's way of adding education about safety around weapons for children into their comprehensive school safety bill after Uvalde is something that's very much worth the serious consideration of this body, Senator from the 22nd. And, like I said, I kind of like the branding they came up with. There is nothing in this amendment that says what the language would be or what would be disseminated. That's all to be decided by DOE in concert with our public safety agencies, right? So this was just kind of an example because that's what they did in Texas. But yes, there's nothing in there about what it would look like or even what it would say exactly, right? But I kind of like how they have the branding of Keep 'em Safe Texas with their two pistols. It's a very Texas branded, Texas culturally appropriate way to make widespread ownership of guns like they have there and certainly like we have here and throughout our country, just more safe, and that's all we really want, right?
Well, Senator Yield, for one other question.
Certainly.
And that would be, one of the things you mentioned was that this is not a mandate of actually any action as such. Can you kind of go into that a little bit further?
Yes,
please?
no, there's no action mandated, there's no penalties. It's just like anything else that would come home with kids, although this would probably just go on the website of each school, right? as I understand it, as I understand how we typically do this sort of thing, when we have said, look, we want parents and guardians to be educated about something through the public schools. My understanding is that's typically a drop down within each school's website. But yeah, no, there's no mandates, no penalties. No one has to do anything or change their behavior one iota as a result. Just like anything else that's simply education based, the hope is that people will read it and maybe take some steps that they're not taking right now that will make our schools safer, make kids safer, essentially. But if they choose not to or don't want to, they don't have to.
Recognize Senator from the 46.
Thank you. Will Senator yield?
Of course.
Senator, would you be willing to stand down on this amendment if I would agree to work with you on it as a separate piece of legislation? It's great policy. It makes sense. Every responsible parent or adult needs to keep their farm secure away from children. But I am so concerned that if we change or add to this bill, that it slows down a very important issue that my dream is this goes back across the hall, immediate transmittal, and that they agree and we have moved forward with helping keep our schools safe. And my fear is that despite your good intentions, this slows down that process and potentially creates an impediment. Would you be willing to consider withdrawing that so we can work on this as an independent measure?
Well, thank you for the question, Senator. I'm always, of course, happy to partner with you, one of our most veteran members of the state Senate, and I appreciate your view that this is kind of common sense and doesn't get in the way of anyone's rights around the Second Amendment. Obviously, I view it as part and parcel of what's already in the bill regarding violence and suicide prevention, and note that it would still be an agree. And, but in all honesty, I actually wish I had had time to deal with this a little earlier. So I could have come to you and I could have gone to the author and just with some stuff, with everything going on down here and with some stuff I had to do with my children, the time got away from me. So that really would have been my intention. So, let me just say that I'll come and speak with you about it when I get out of the well, and it's certainly something that I would consider partnering with you on.
Thank you so much, Senator. I appreciate your consideration and your concerns for our children.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think you got a couple people that want to speak on this bill. You don't have a question, do you,
Okay.
Senator from the 41st?
Yeah. Oh.
You want to speak on it? Okay, you don't have any more questions, Senator.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate your consideration, and I yield the well.
I'm sorry, the Senator from the 34th does have her, she had her other light on, but she does want to ask a question.
My bad, I'm
So,
sorry.
no problem.
Does the senator yield?
Yes, I certainly do.
I just have one question. Do you know of any other state that have similar legislation?
Yeah, as I was explaining earlier, Texas newly did this type of education after the Robb Elementary shooting, which, and I believe that the senator from the 46th mentioned that he thinks, and to my knowledge, I think he's correct, that this is kind of the first school shooting of this type that we have had in Georgia. Frankly, we have been pretty fortunate. We do know that for a number of years, more kids have died in a firearm-related incident or accident than any other cause. So that's part of why I offered it, is because we would like to see that not be the case, right? And so it's really just about keeping people safe. And when I saw that Texas had thought to include it in their legislation, I know that Texas is not a state that's going to make our colleagues here on the other side of the aisle think, oh no, this must be a total gun grabber thing. And that would be my goal, is to say, hey, if a state that's a Second Amendment, pro Second Amendment as Texas thought this was a good idea, it's worthy of our consideration here in Georgia.
All right, Senator. You have no further questions.
All right, thank you. I yield the
Thank
floor.
you. Recognize Senator from the 41st. Speak to the bill. Secretary, read the amendment that actually the senator from the 41st is presenting.
Mr. President, Senator Jackson, the 41st, offers the following amendment number 2 to amend the Senate Committee on Judiciary Substitute to House Bill 268 by replacing lines 1360 through 1362 with the following. Said chapter is further amended by revising subsection A in paragraph 2, subsection B, by adding a new subsection to Code 20-2-1181 related to disrupting operation of a public school, school bus, or school bus stop penalty and progressive discipline to read as follows. By deleting the quotation mark at the end of line 1383 and inserting between lines 1383 and 1384 the following. C. Nothing in this code section shall be construed to apply to speech protected by Georgia Constitution or the First Amendment to the United States Constitution by inserting between lines 1412 and 1413 the following. B.1, in determining whether a statement constitutes a terroristic threat under subsection B of this code section, the trier of fact shall consider 1, the full context and circumstances surrounding the statement, 2, the person's capacity to form intent and understand their statement's consequences, considering their age, education, cognitive development, 3, any language barrier, intellectual disability, developmental disability, cognitive impairment, mental health condition, or neurological difference that may affect comprehension or communication, and 4, whether a reasonable person fully aware of this individual's limitations and circumstances would perceive the statement as a genuine threat and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize Senator from the 41st.
Thank you, Mr. President. In just a few moments, the amendment will arrive on your desk, hopefully, where you'll be able to see this up front. But I want to start by giving some shape to why I'm bringing this amendment. So this amendment essentially provides some measuring tests, some weightiness to determine whether or not a child is actually cognitively capable of understanding the words that they're saying. So why am I bringing this? Because we know in my own county, in DeKalb County, we had a young person who was over the age of 13 who said some words, who made what, looking at the words alone, would constitute a terroristic threat. However, when you pull back the curtain, we learned that that child had disabilities, that child really was diagnosed with autism, had clear cognitive diminishments or incapability to truly understand the full weight, right? The whole purpose, I think, around trying to keep our children safe is that we want to keep our children safe from real threats, from people who are actually intending to do them harm, not from a 13-year-old who has no ability to really cognitively understand the meanings of what he or she is saying, who may just be copying something that they've seen, or maybe they draw something on a piece of paper. We want to make sure there's some standards in place so that those children who, in fact, just need somebody to talk to them aren't getting caught up in this large web. And I heard the senator from the 46 talk about how he's removed terroristic threats from being charged as an adult, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the work that is here, but I think that it's really important that we protect all children, and that includes our children who may have some cognitive difficulties or may have an English proficiency issue, so they may be saying words that they don't fully understand, or maybe even the person who heard it doesn't fully understand. And so this is really, it's a test. It just says, before we determine that this is a terroristic threat, we're going to make sure we look at the full context of the circumstance. We're going to look at the whole child, and we want to make sure that they actually had intent. And then we're going to look at their language. Was there intellectual disability, a developmental disability, a cognitive impairment, mental health condition, or a neurological difference that may have affected their ability to comprehend and to communicate. And then there's this kind of a reasonableness. Actually, I feel really inspired by the senator from the 37th, because he's always talking about these kind of weightness tests, these tests and reasonableness, right? So this says that there has to be a reasonable Was this a reasonable person who was fully aware of the individual's limitations and circumstances? Would a reasonable person perceive it to be a genuine threat? So I'm just trying to put some safeguards in place for what are in fact some of our more vulnerable children. Our children who are living with limitations cognitively or in terms of their speech, neurologically, and we're going to say, let's slow down for a moment. And let's just make sure that that child who we know, any reasonable adult knows by looking at all of these different pieces that they did not have the intent. We're going to make sure they don't have to go through a criminal justice process as it relates to criminal terroristic threats. Again, this is considered a friendly amendment. I acknowledge a lot of work has gone on to create an over 50-page bill already, but I think it's imperative to this body that we consider and that we carve out just a test. Now, I'm not saying that someone who has mental limitations can't actually be a real threat. That's possible. But we just want to make sure we slow down long enough to ensure that that person, that child, had real intent, that they understood what they were trying to say, and that they were actually intending to cause real harm in a school. So again, I know this body, we are a deliberative body, we care a lot for our children. This bill is fundamentally about caring for our children. And I ask that you would consider voting yes on this amendment so that we make sure that children who have limitations are not unjustly caught up in this system because they don't fundamentally understand the words that they're saying as they come out of their mouth. With that, I will yield for questions.
You do have a couple questions, Senator. Recognize the senator from the 37th.
Does the lady yield?
Yes, sir, I will.
Thank you for the spirit of this amendment. We were talking earlier about this, and I like where you're going with this. You know, my wife's a school teacher. She's had circumstances where kids pass notes to each other that communicate a threat or in writing, something that would be she can't ignore, but she knows it's a joke. It's 14-year-old boys, right? My only concern about the amendment is when you on line 19. You have paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4. And there's an and between 3 and 4. All 4 of these conditions have to exist. I'm not sure that this should be limited to kids that have intellectual disabilities. It would seem that this really only applies to kids who are in some way neurodivergent, and that it's a little too narrow, that perhaps other tests, I don't know if this should be an or. I just want to know if it's your intention that this should be limited only to kids who have a discrete intellectual disability, developmental disability, cognitive impairment, or mental health condition as a limiting factor to who this applies to.
Yes, sir. And so also a language barrier, because we do want to acknowledge that some children English is not their first language, that there could be a real language barrier to understanding, for even us understanding what they're saying. And so, we're trying to create some parameters here,
correct?
Right? We don't want it to be so wide open that all children, because I could stand up here and actually make a very cogent argument to say, listen, no child's brain is fully developed, and so we know from brain science that they should not even be charged as an adult because their brains don't fully develop until 25. We could do that. I could make that argument, but we're not doing this here. We're limiting it to say, no, you need to look at the totality of the child, and they do need to have either an intellectual disability, a developmental disability, a cognitive impairment, mental health condition, neurological difference, or a language barrier. Like, we are limiting it because I think that's right. We don't want to, this body has made it clear to me that we do not want to open it up. This body continues to decide to prosecute children who are 17 and older as adults, right? We've made some clear definitions. The senator from the 46 said they're making adult choices, they're doing adult things, so they're going to have adult consequences. So I think it is right to confine this to children who have clear and known. It's also something that can be tested, right? There's documentation that can help us know whether or not we're fitting this, so it's not just kind of one teacher's understanding, well, I think this child. So, I hear you, Senator. I have 2 little boys, and I'm sure one day they will be bigger and they will say things that I really wish that they won't say. But at the end of the day, I think my responsibility here is to protect the most vulnerable. And I think that it's our children who have these limitations who are most vulnerable and who need to make sure they have some added protections here in the law. So that's what we're seeking to do.
Thank you.
No further questions, Senator.
Thank you. Again, I ask for your favorable consent, your favorable consideration as we consider this amendment number 2. Thank you.
Senator from the 46th, you like to close debate?
This very brief, because we got a lot of other bills to deal with. But I can't imagine one that's more important than this one for us this year. Maybe, in our careers, these amendments are not bad concepts. It's a lot of common sense in them. Senator from the 41st just raised some concerns that were raised in subcommittee. There were a couple of parents that were not proficient in English, their children were not, and that had been sort of, for lack of a better term, falsely accused of making some threats. I think one of them had disabilities as well and didn't, maybe have the cognizance of what was going on. As it turned out, in both of those instances, the disciplinary process worked and they were not punished. One of them maybe was, but got it reversed. I can't remember the whole details. I really appreciate the spirit of these, but the timing is wrong. I've already stated now publicly I support the policy on the first one. The second one I really think is already in the law. I mean, the first line is that nothing in this code section be true to apply to speech protected by the Constitution and First Amendment. Well, that's true with anything we pass. We can't violate constitutional right to free speech, etc. So even if we put something in language, the interpretation, the application by the courts would not allow us to do that. The rest of these factors that should be taken into account essentially deal with the intent of the actor. Did they intend to commit the crime? That's an element of the crime anyway. A good defense counsel would raise those. We learn early in law school, first year law school, think back to the paper chase, any of you old enough to remember that. In criminal law, mens rea is the Latin term for having the requisite intent, criminal intent to do something, and all of these address that. I really feel like all of these deal with Senate Bill 61 that talked about the criminalization of terroristic threats, and these would more appropriately have been handled during our committee process, our floor debates on those issues, rather than bring them up this late in the game. That's one of the beauties of this body, is that we have free and open debate. We are known as the deliberative body because we're allowed to amend bills even on the floor, and if they're great ideas, any time's better than no time. But I mean, let's don't take a chance of not passing this bill. Let's don't do anything to put sand in the gears that gives the other side of this building a chance to say no, and then come back and make other changes, and us go tit-tat for the next couple of days, because we are on day 38. And we got 2 more days to hammer all any differences out. So I would ask us to reject these amendments, not based on the policy, but based on the timing and the potential that we could foul up maybe the most important thing we do this session. So I will work with anybody going forward. That is a great thing about this system we're in. Every year we come back and we correct mistakes we made before, we perfect things, and we take them a step further. And hopefully that's what we're doing on school safety, is we're setting the foundation, and we're going to keep on going higher and higher and better year by year. But I would ask that we reject these amendments just so that we can pass this 57-page bill that does so much good. So for those reasons, I ask for you to reject both amendments if they're not withdrawn. And let's all work together collaboratively going forward to see if there are ways we can perfect our legislation or give additional provisions to protect children in all aspects. Thank you so much. I yield the well.
All right, thank you, Senator. Recognize Senator from the 44th.
Thank you, Mr. President. In light of my conversation at the well with the senator from the 46th and his willingness to work on the policy that I'm trying to get at here in Amendment 1, I'd like to ask for unanimous consent to withdraw Amendment 1 at this time.
All right. Is there objection? Senator's asked to withdraw her amendment. Without objections, the amendment is withdrawn. Okay, so we are, question is going to be on the adoption of amendment number 2. Since number 1 was withdrawn. Is there objection to amendment number 2, authored by the senator from the 41st? Let's object. All right, all those in favor of the amendment will vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the adoption of amendment number 2, the yeas are 25 and the nays are 29, and this amendment has failed. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none, the report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, the main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 45, the nays are 9. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Secretary, read a message from the House, please.
Mr. President, the following message was received from the House through Mr. Riley, the clerk thereof. Mr. President, the House insists on its position in disagreeing to the Senate substitute and has appointed a committee on conference to confer with a like committee on the part of the Senate with the following bill of the House. House Bill 68, by Representative Burns, the 159th, and others. Bill to be entitled an act to make and provide appropriations for the state fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2025, and ending June 30th, 2026, and for other purposes. The Speaker is appointed on the part of the House Representative Jones of the 47th, Abstration of the 104th, and Hatch of the 155th. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize the Appropriations Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate adhere to its position on House Bill 68 and that a conference committee be appointed.
Is there objection? Hearing no objection, even from the caveman corner over there. The conferees will be the pro tem, Senator from the 18th, the Majority Leader, Senator from the 51st, and the Appropriations Chair, Senator from the 19th. So let's go on and get the budget done, guys, and then we can just adjourn out of here on Wednesday. What do y'all think? There's not much left on the calendar for us to take up. Secretary Reed, House Bill 288.
House Bill 288 by Representative Gaines, the 120th and others, Bill to be Town and Act to amend Article 2, Chapter 6, Title 5, Chapter 4 of Title 9, Article 1 of Chapter 18 of Title 15, and Chapter 16 of Title 17 of the OCGA related to appellate practice, declaratory judgments, prosecuting attorneys, and criminal trials, respectively, so as to provide for declaratory judgments in instances involving accusations made by a prosecuting attorney regarding the credibility of a peace officer, to amend Chapter 8 of Title 35 of the OCGA related to employment and training of peace officers so as to provide for a review by the Georgia Peace Officer Standards and Training Council of accusations of peace officer impairments, and as a witness to provide for definitions to amend Part 1 of Article 4 of Chapter 12, Title 15 of the OCGA related to general provisions relative to grand juries so as to provide for conforming changes, to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland, Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary offers the following substitute to House Bill 288, a bill to be entitled Act to amend Title 15 of the OCGA related to courts so as to require a person qualifying as a candidate for sheriff be a peace officer not under revocation by the Georgia Peace Officer Standards and Training Council and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize the Judiciary Chairman for the 42nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, House Bill 288 does two things. First, in Section 1, it revises the qualifications for serving as a sheriff in our state to make certain that our sheriffs are post-certified. The exception will be, as you'll see in Section 1, individuals that are former military, former law enforcement, or first responders. They can get qualified within 6 months after taking office and become post-certified. The rest of the bill deals with what's called a Giglio list, and this is where an officer has been placed on a list based on issues with their credibility as a witness when it comes to testifying in criminal matters. And we're creating due process for the officer to make sure they can be aware of the fact they've been put on this list and respond to that and try to object to it. And second, we're also making certain that Post gets notified of this so Post can deal with any officers that need to have disciplinary action as a result of that. Happy to answer any questions.
One question, Senator. Recognize Senator from the 53rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Yes, sir.
So help me understand what is current law. If I want to run for sheriff and I'm not post-certified, can I do that?
Current law, you'll see in the bill, you have to be a registered peace officer or as a certified peace officer. So I guess it depends upon the definition of registered peace officer right now versus someone that's certified as a Georgia Peace Officer Standards and Training Council, and also making certain that someone has not had their certification revoked. And so I'm not sure exactly the difference in that definition. It's not in the bill as to what a registered peace officer is, but we're definitely making that certain now as to how this will work.
So what exactly is Section 1 doing in your bill?
So it's creating a standard where you have to be post-certified. You can't have your post-certification revoked to run, with the exception being first responders, former law enforcement, or federal law enforcement that can still run and qualify to be sheriff. They must then get that training within 6 months of being elected.
And that reflects current law within 6 months of being elected?
That is a new change in the law.
Yeah, one more question, Senator. Recognize the Senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Yes, sir.
Just clarification on the last question from the Senator 53rd. Did you say the change is now that before you run, you'd have to be post-certified? Is that correct?
It's at the time of qualifying as a candidate for the office. That's correct. With those exceptions being the individuals that can get the certification within 6 months of taking office.
So that's the same, basically?
That's the second
6
part.
months, okay,
That's
thank
correct.
you. All right.
I ask for your favorable consideration of House Bill 288. Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the Porter Committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The Porter Committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor will vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 55 and the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Secretary, read House Bill 495.
House Bill 495 by Representative Dickey, the 134th and others, a bill to Town and Act to amend Title 20 of the OCGA related to education so as to repeal Chapter 18 related to the Center for Rural Prosperity and Innovation, to amend Title 2 of the OCGA related to agriculture so as to transfer the Center for Rural Prosperity and Innovation to the Department of Agriculture, to provide for a director, to provide for assumptions of business and responsibilities of the Centers of Innovation Agribusiness and collaboration with other entities, to provide for the Georgia Rural Development Council, to provide for duties of satellite offices, to provide for funds, to provide for reporting and approval of strategic plans, to provide for related matters, to bill conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Goodman, Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize Senator from the 11th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. This is House Bill 495. This is just moving the Center for Rural Prosperity and Innovation from the Board of Regents over to the Department of Agriculture. We've already done that move in the budget, so we're just having to do that in statute. This is a great organization that works on a lot of our rural issues. A lot of our rural communities don't have staff and resources, and this center helps them not only from things like that and admin, but also grant work and just helping folks in rural Georgia. And that's all I've got, and I'll be glad to take any questions if there are any.
Well, you have no
Thank
questions, Senator. Man of your integrity, they believe every word that comes out of your mouth. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the purported committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The purported committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor will vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50 and the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Secretary read House Bill 303.
House Bill 303, by Representative Gilliard, the 162nd and others, a bill between Town and Act to amend Chapter 3 of Title 50 of the OCGA would like to state flag, seal, and other symbols as to provide for placement of a monument to honor the original 33, to provide for short title, to provide for related matters, to appeal smoking laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State Institutions and Property recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Harbison, Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President, colleagues. In 1868, we had 33 African Americans that were elected to the Georgia General Assembly, and they became known as the original 33. And what this bill does is it will honor those 33 men. And as a person that believes there are no coincidences, 33 is an important number in this state. 33 represents the number of points on a compass, also known as areas. And I think that's important to understand today because in 1865, our country took a new direction. And so these men represent that new direction that we took. They represent the direction that we continue to take as a state, always moving forward. And this simply is going to honor those men, and we will honor them by placing a monument on Capitol grounds or in a prominent place around this Capitol. We're building a new building that could possibly be a good spot, and just simply honoring their sacrifice that they made back then when they went up against all odds. And that is simply what this bill does. I'll yield for questions. I will add that this is just like any monument that goes up here. It is based on subject to availability of private funds, so it is a privately funded venture. I'll yield for questions.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you. I urge your favorable consideration for HB 303.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears it. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 0. This bill having received requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed. Secretary read House Bill 74.
House Bill 74 by Representative Powell, the 33rd, and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 27, Title 50, the OCGA, the Georgia Lottery for Education Act, so as to correct a reference, to provide for the application of the provisions of the Georgia Administrative Procedure Act to certain provisions of the code related to bona fide coin-operated amusement machines, to provide for exemptions from the Georgia Administrative Procedure Act regarding the Georgia Lottery Corporation for certain matters not related to bona fide coin-operated amusement machines, to provide for related matters, provide for effective dates, repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Economic Development and Tourism recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Beach, Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize Senator from the 45th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I bring HB 74 before you today. This bill, it simply places the COAM division of the Georgia Lottery Corporation under the Administrative Procedures Act. House Bill 74, it fixes an error from last year's COAM bill, and it just places all licensure rules, regulations, policies, procedures, and hearings under the Administrative Procedures Act. With that, Mr. President, I'd be happy to answer any questions, or I'll yield the well. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
You got one question. Senator from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
I do.
Senator, are there other entities that are not found underneath the Administrative Procedures Act?
No, there are.
Would it be, do you think we need to take an overall look at maybe, well, first, I guess, why would any agency not be bound by the Administrative Procedures Act?
Yeah, don't have an answer for you there.
Would you be willing to work with me in the future to potentially remedy the fact that some agencies
absolutely.
do not have to provide notice when they provide rules?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
No more questions, Senator.
I yield the well.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measures? Is there objections to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. Report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor will vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0. This bill, having received a requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. We've got another message from the House here. Need to read. Secretary?
Mr. President, the following message was received from the House through Mr. Riley, the clerk thereof. Mr. President, the House has passed by the requisite constitutional majority the following bills of the House and the Senate. House Bill 111 by Representative LaHood, 175th and others, bill to entitle an act to provide a homestead exemption from Lowndes County School District out of Florida taxes for educational purposes in the amount of $40,000.
State and local government.
House Bill 813 by Representative LaHood, 175th.
State and local government.
House Bill 814 by Representative LaHood, 175th and
State and
others.
local government.
House Bill 815 by Representative LaHood, 175th.
State and local government.
House Bill 816 by Representative Rhodes, 124th.
State and local government.
House Bill 819 by Representative Washburn,
State and local
144th.
government.
House Bill 820 by Representative Washburn, 144th.
State and local government.
House Bill 823 by Representative Wade of the 9th and others.
State and local government.
House Bill 824 by Representative Wade of the 9th and others. Bills
State and local government.
House Bill 832 by Representative Galt of the 19th.
State and local government.
House Bill 834 by Representative Kelly of the
State and
16th.
local
House Bill
government.
835 by Representative Carpenter of the 4th and others. Bill to be entitled an act to provide
State and local government.
House Bill 836 by Representative Smith.
State and local government.
House Bill 837 by Representative Miles of
State and local government.
House Bill 838 by Representative Smith of the 70th and others.
State and local government.
House Bill 839 by Representative Gaines of the 120th and others.
State and local government.
House Bill 840 by Representative Jaspers of the 11th.
State and local government.
House Bill 841 by Representative Jaspers of the 11th.
State and local government.
House Bill 842 by Representative Carpenter of the 4th and others. Bill to be
State and local government.
House Bill 843 by Representative Carpenter of the 4th and others. Bill to be entitled.
State and local government.
House Bill 844 by Representative Carpenter of the 4th and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend an act providing homestead.
State and local government.
House Bill 845 by Representative Ridley of the 22nd and others. Bill to be
State and
entitled.
local government.
House Bill 846 by Representative Thomas of the 21st.
State and local government.
House Bill 847 by Representative Cummings of the 39th
State
and
and
others.
local government.
House Bill 848 by Representative Kelly of the
State and
16th.
local government.
House Bill 849 by Representative Green, the 154th and others. Bill to
State and local government.
House Bill 850 by Representative Newton, the 127th and others. Bill
State and local government.
House Bill 853 by Representative Carpenter of the 4th and others. Bill to be entitled.
State and local government.
House Bill 854 by Representative Carpenter of the 4th and others. Bill to be
State and local government.
House Bill 855 by Representative Taylor, the 173rd. A bill to be
State and local government.
House Bill 856 by Representative LaHood, the 173rd.
State and local government.
House Bill 857 by Representative Cummings of the 39th and others. Bill
State and local government.
House Bill 858 by Representative Cummings of the 39th and others.
State and local government.
House Bill 859 by Representative Gamble of the 15th
State
and
and
others.
local government.
House Bill 860 by Representative Barton of the 5th and
State
others.
and local government.
House Bill 861 by Representative Barton of the 5th and others.
State and local government.
House Bill 869 by Representative Gamble of the 15th.
State and local government.
House Bill 870 by Representative Neal of the 79th and
State
others.
and local government.
Senate Bill 256 by Senator Cowser of the 46th. A bill to be entitled an act to
State and
amend.
local government.
Mr. President, that completes the order.
Senator from the 14th, what purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President.
State your inquiry.
I'd never really thought about this. Is it my understanding, is it correct that you have the ability to just send a message to the House and they can send messages back to you using the Secretary's office as an official channel? Is that not true?
Some would say that is.
And Mr. President, is it not true that up till now we've wasted that awesome power on a bunch of boring reading of bills and chamber activity when we could be passing fun notes to the House, Mr. President?
You know, you're exactly right, Senator. And maybe in these last 2 days remaining, maybe we can come up with some things.
I'll help you come up with a note to send the House, Mr. President.
All right, that sounds great. I look forward to that. You'll be our new communications czar. There we go. The messenger. The czar right there. The Senate messenger czar. Senator from the 31st, what purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true, piggybacking off the senator from the 14th, that every single one, maybe almost every one of those bills coming from the House is a statement that Georgians want lower property taxes?
All right. Senator, you're reading deeper into it than what I expected. Recognize Senator from the 6th.
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, if the senator from the 14th is going to be our new communications czar, would it not be good for the senator from the 53rd to actually deliver the messages for us?
Ooh, that's a great question. That's a great question. We'll send them together. Just in case one message doesn't get there. Senator from the 53rd, do you have a rebuttal to that?
Point of order, Mr. President.
State.
I'm scared for my safety, and when you're scared, you're supposed to say you're scared. Going over the House, I just want to send a message statement of fact. Fire burns.
All right. Moving on. House Bill 94. Secretary read House Bill 94.
House Bill 94 by Representative Lumpton, the 12th and others, a bill to entitle an act to amend Chapter 24, Title 33, the official code of Georgia annotated related to insurance generally so as to require coverage for certain expenses for standard fertility preservation services when a medically necessary treatment of cancer, sickle cell disease, or lupus may directly or indirectly cause an impairment of fertility, to provide for definitions, to provide for exclusions, to allow for certain cost-sharing requirements, to provide for rules and regulations, to provide for related matters, to provide for effective dates, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Walker, Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor offers the following substitute to House Bill 94, bill to entitle an act to amend Chapter 24, Title 33, the official code of Georgia annotated related to insurance generally so as to require certain health benefit policies to include coverage for certain expenses for standard fertility preservation services and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senator Huffsettler of the 52nd offers the following amendment number 1 to amend the Senate Committee substitute to House Bill 94 by replacing lines 17 through 20 with the following. Policies or contracts executed by the state, such terms shall not include self-funded employer. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize Senator from the 52nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is brought by the insurance chair of the House, and the word for today is iatrogenic. And iatrogenic illness is one that's caused by medical treatment. In this case, we're looking at lupus, sickle cell, cancer, where the chemo, radiation, things like that could potentially make somebody sterile. So what this bill would do would say that this doesn't make insurance cover in vitro fertilization, but it does say that the harvesting of such as the eggs would be covered and storage of up to a year would be covered. So this would let you store the gametes for up to a year under insurance. And the reason for the amendment was that I heard that I'll bet secondhand that the administration wanted this amendment on there because it would make it revenue neutral, in which case they would look more favorably on it, which I guess that means they wouldn't veto it. I'm not sure. Anyway, I would urge your favorable passage of this bill as amended by Amendment 1. If there's no questions, I'll yield to Will.
You do have one question. Senator from the 47th.
Would the senator yield?
Certainly, for my back row seatmate there.
You know, I'm checking my spelling, and I hope you won't look at it when you tell me, but that word that you mentioned of the day, can you spell it without looking at it?
IATROGENIC, I believe is the spelling.
You win the prize.
No further questions, Senator. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Questions on the adoption of. Oh, wait a minute. We got Amendment 1 here. Does anybody Amendment 1 authored by the senator from the 52nd? Is there objection to Amendment 1? Without objection, Amendment 1 is adopted. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute as amended? Hearing none, committee substitute as amended is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor will vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Secretary, read House Bill 123.
House Bill 123 by Representative Worktower of the 157th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 17 of the Fish Code of Georgia annotated related to criminal procedures so as to provide for pretrial proceedings and capital offense cases where the death penalty is sought. When the accused has intellectual disability, to provide for definition, to provide for notice of intent to claim intellectual disability, to provide for pretrial determination of intellectual disability, to provide for verdicts, to provide for capital case procedures, to provide for reports investigating reversible errors, to provide for standard review, to provide for related matters, for bill collecting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland, Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary offers the following substitute: House Bill 123, bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 17 of the OCGA related to criminal procedure so as to provide for pretrial proceedings and capital offense cases where death penalty is sought when the accused has an intellectual disability and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize the senator from the 42nd.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. House Bill 123 is ensuring that when we seek justice for capital crimes in our state, we're not sentencing to death those with intellectual disabilities. We're creating now a pretrial process before a case gets to a jury where the issue of someone's intellectual disability can be decided by the judge. The burden will be on that defendant to prove by preponderance of evidence that they have an intellectual disability. And if the court finds that they do, then the death penalty is off the table. This is a bill that has been worked on for, I think, 3 years by Chairman Werkheiser, who's in the chamber with us today. And it's something that he's put a lot of time into. I also want to commend the Southern Center for Human Rights, Mike Admiran, if I can say his name correctly, senior attorney with them, and also our prosecutors that all work together to make sure that we got this bill in the right place. Happy to answer any questions.
You do have one question. Recognize senator from the 29th.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is Chairman Yield.
Yes.
Thank you. Briefly, and I thought you did a great job presenting the bill. Could you give us a brief explanation of the difference between reasonable and preponderance?
So the current standard is beyond reasonable doubt, which is our highest standard. In every criminal case, the state has the burden of proving beyond reasonable doubt someone committed a crime. A jury would actually decide under current law, which is the way intellectual disability is considered under current law, at the phase of the trial itself. And considering the actual guilt or innocence of the person being charged with a crime, they could decide whether or not that person is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, but also has intellectual disability beyond reasonable doubt. With this bill, we're moving it to preponderance of evidence standard, meaning that more likely than not, the defendant must have the burden that they have an intellectual disability with a pretrial hearing.
Thank you. Senator, further yield?
Yes.
So in hearing your explanation, does the burden shift in this legislation from where the burden would be today?
Yes, the current burden is on the state to prove, just like any other criminal case, to prove the offense itself. And the jury must then decide whether or not there's an intellectual disability in that process. So I guess the way you're asking it, state's not proving an intellectual disability, but jury's deciding that beyond reasonable doubt. We shift this now on the front end for the defendant to prove by preponderance of evidence. They'll probably bring an expert in, someone that would testify in front of a judge in a pretrial hearing that they have an intellectual disability, while still preserving the trial option. And so at trial, by preponderance, built in to be consistent, a second phase of a trial could happen where someone could still prove, yes, I'm guilty, but I had an intellectual disability when I committed that crime. The outcome would be that person cannot be sentenced to death. But in the Judiciary Committee, we also left the option of life without parole for the sentencing court. So someone that is a true threat to society that we're not going to have subject to the death penalty, we also know that some people have to stay locked up, and that option will still be there for the state, of course, to seek.
And if Senator further yields, the life without parole, was that added in on the Senate side?
Is that what was the question?
The life without parole option, was that put in in Senate Judiciary?
It was. The current law you have in these situations, in looking at again after the trial itself, the current process is you just have a life sentence and not the death penalty. Since we're creating this new pretrial process with a lower standard, we still are not going to have the death penalty, obviously, but we left the option for life without parole, knowing that, again, some people, while they may have a disability, still are such a threat to society that it should not be let out.
Thank you, Senator.
You have no further questions, sir.
Ask for favorable consideration of House Bill 123. Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Hearing none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. Previous question is ordered. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none. Committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 53, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Secretary read House Bill 144.
House Bill 144 by Representative Newton, the 127th and others, the bill to maintain an act to amend Chapter 7, Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated related to income taxes so as to revise the tax credit for certain medical preceptive rotations to dentistry to increase the value of the tax credit, to revise definitions, to provide for an aggregate annual cap, to extend the sunset provision for the tax credit, to provide for related matters, to provide for an effective date and applicability, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Hostetler, Chairman. Mr. President, a fiscal note has been attached, and that completes the order.
Recognize Senator from the 52nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a renewal of the soon-to-sunset preceptor program that we have in the state. It would extend it another 5 years through 2030. It would begin January 1st next year. The other addition is that besides physicians, advanced practice nurses, and physician assistants, that dentists would now participate in this program. I believe there were about 18,000 of these training programs. To get one of these credits, you train a student for 160 hours, and you're not paid for the training of the student. It's just sort of a volunteer thing. With that, I urge your favorable consideration. I'll answer any questions.
No questions, Senator. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 48 and the nays are 5. This bill having received the requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed. Secretary read House Bill 153. 153, sorry.
House Bill 153 by Representative Camp of the 135th and others, a bill to entitle an act to amend Code Section 48-8-3.2, the official code of Georgia annotated related to sales and use tax exemptions for manufacturing equipment, industrial machines, packing supplies, and energy, so as to extend the sunset date for an exemption for the maintenance and replacement parts of certain machinery or equipment used to mix or transport concrete, to provide for related matters, repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance recommends that this bill to pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Huffstetler, Chairman. Mr. President, a fiscal has been attached, and that completes the order.
The chair recognizes the senator from the 25th. My senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a very simple bill. This is deals with the concrete mixing trucks. And we have passed this bill a few years ago. All we're doing is extending the expiration date from 2026 to 2031. I ask for your favorable consideration, and I'll yield the well.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. Previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. Report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 44, the nays are 7. This bill, having received a requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Secretary read House Bill 155.
House Bill 155 by Representative Anderson of the 10th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 7, Chapter 36 of Title 36 of the official code of Georgia annotated related to procedure for resolving annexation disputes, so as to revise procedures for the selection and objection to arbitrators, to revise how arbitration panels report their findings and recommendations, to revise provisions related to compensation of arbitrators, to provide for related matters, to provide for an effective date, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations General recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Dixon, Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Governmental Operations General offers the following substitute to House Bill 155, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 7, Chapter 36 of Title 36 of the official code of Georgia annotated related to procedure for resolving annexation disputes, so as to revise procedures for the selection and objection to arbitrators and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senator Hatch of the 50th and others offer the following amendment number 1 to amend the substitute to House Bill 155 by inserting after definitions on line 12 the following: to amend Code Section 36-36-20, the OCGA related to contiguous area defined, so as to revise provisions for certain properties owned by municipalities by inserting after line 417 the following: Part 2A, Section 2A-1, Code Section 36-36-20 of the OCGA related to contiguous area defined is amended by revising subsection C as follows. C, if at the time annexation procedures are initiated, the entire area to be annexed is owned by the municipal governing authority and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize Senator from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, colleagues. You guys have probably had, at least some of you probably had some issues with annexations in and around the areas that you live in. HB 155 seeks to get some clarity on some of that. Over the past couple years, the Georgia Department of Community Affairs has experienced repeated challenges in fulfilling their statutory obligation in fielding annexation arbitration panels. They cited that they've been unable to find enough panelists to serve on these panels for a lot of reasons, including the increase of the number of these cases, also a lack of qualified people and volunteers to serve on the panels, a very limited 15-day timeline to establish the panel. They say that's not enough, and then also the pay that those panelists receive. So what happens is when DCA fails to establish a panel, the department opts to dismiss the annexation altogether in favor of the city. So a couple points here. It improves the timelines for these arbitration panel selections. It extends that time frame for DCA to propose the annexation arbitration panelists from 15 calendar days to 15 business days. It also gives DCA the time it needs to properly review the objections and propose qualified panelists. It's a fair process for the panel selection. Once the panelists are proposed, both the city and the county have 5 calendar days to strike certain panelists. It maintains forward momentum in those cases. If either party chooses not to exercise their right to strike, the process continues and DCA retains the authority to appoint the panel and keep disputes moving forward. The second part of the bill deals with special administrative permits that are intended to simply be administrative approvals so they can be done reasonably and quickly for property owners or petitioning a business or applicant. The legislation simply reverts the special administrative permit process back to its intended administrative review process and also allows for direct appeals of zoning decisions to expedite the legal process when a zoning decision is challenged. Mr. President, I yield for question.
Question. Senator from the 42nd.
As Senator yield?
Of course. To my friend from the 42nd.
And I really appreciate your attitude. I just wondered if you could weigh in on the potential amendment I see. I believe it was on this bill. You didn't address that. I was trying to help you out.
My neighbor to the north is bringing a friendly amendment. I'm going to let him speak on that. And our good neighbor, Representative Anderson, in between us, this is his legislation, and he's kind of stuck dead center of myself and the senator from the 50th. So I'll let Senator from the 50th speak on the amendment.
Okay, I just want to make sure you lifted the collar and understood what was in the amendment. Thank you.
I do. Thank you, sir.
Recognize, Senator, you have a couple more questions. You're free to yield at any time, though.
I'll yield the well.
You yield the well. Probably wise, actually. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Recognize the senator from the 50th to speak to his amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to ask your support on Amendment 1. What Amendment 1 deals with is something called spoke annexation, and it's a provision in state law where essentially a city, they can follow a road, a creek, a river, or anything like that that creates a spoke and can annex land along that highway or river. We're starting to see this more, and being from Northeast Georgia, no offense to those that live in Atlanta, but I really don't want Atlanta to annex anything in my county. We're also the head of the Chattahoochee River. Technically they could follow the river and annex. And I don't think, I'm not doing away with spoke annexation completely, but what we are doing with this is not only does it have to be approved by the governing authority of the county, which is the county commission, but if you are going to do spoke annexation, it also has to be a referendum on the ballot that the residents of the county have to vote for and approve before the annexation can occur. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
You do have one question, Senator. Recognize Senator from the 14th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the Senator yield?
I do.
Is it not true that although you may not want Atlanta to annex parts of your county, Atlanta has been considering, quite candidly, the most beautiful parts of your county for annexation, maybe potentially to annex them into the beautiful city of Atlanta because, you know, we have a right to do that. Is that not true, Mr. Senator?
I think everybody's trying to get a piece of our county. It is God's country.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator from the 44th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the gentleman yield?
I will.
Senator, I would like you to let this body know what your official position is on the annexation of A, Greenland, and B, Canada by the United States of America.
I can assure you this, to my knowledge, there are no highways or rivers that connect Georgia with either of those. So this would only affect things in the state of Georgia.
Sounds like you're against those. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. And with that, Mr. President, I will yield the well. Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Question is on amendment number 1. Senator, I'm sorry, would you like to close debate? All right. I'm glad. You did such a wonderful job before. I don't think it needed the closing. On amendment number 1, is there objection to amendment number 1? Objection. We do have objection from the senator from the 6th. All right. Would you like to speak to your objection, Senator? Just want to vote it up or down, huh? All right. All those in favor of amendment number 1 will vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. He didn't know why he was objecting. He just wanted to object. Huh? On the adoption of amendment number 1, the yeas are 47, the nays are 4, and this amendment prevails, is adopted. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute as amended? Hearing none, the committee substitute as amended is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. By substitute, all those in favor will vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. Senator from the 36th. I thought you wanted to annex something too from Atlanta. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 54, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Recognize the majority leader for a motion.
Mr. President, the Senate is tired. We've been working hard all day, so I move that we table the remaining bills on the Senate rules calendar.
What was that, Senator from the 9th? Well, I'm telling you what, we're on to something here. The Senator from the 9th just seconded your motion right there. So, all right. Without objection, we will. Oh, y'all want to object? Oh, okay. Well, they object to it. We're gonna keep working. We're just going to do it in a different order. But Senator, would you like to speak to your motion? Okay. All right. So, would y'all like to speak to your objection? No. Did I hear you're withdrawing? How about we do it on a hand gesture? You withdraw? Okay. All right. So we will table the rest of the bills. We're going to take about a 15-minute break to allow the secretary's desk to get everything in order, and then we'll reconvene here. The pro tem said he had blueberry pie in the. Does he? He doesn't have it? Oh. I'm just playing. He never had it anyways.